Hi everyone and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And today we're discussing patron saints.
Yes.
Which is an interesting topic.
Very much so. I actually recommended this one because I knew that there are some very peculiar, I guess you could say, patron saints out there. There's some pretty typical ones, but there's also some very different ones. And we're, of course, going to explain what patron saints are, but what is a saint, first of all?
Well, I mean, it's somebody was once alive and has been now kind of made into, or their acts in life made them now be considered as somebody very important in heaven.
Right, exactly. Not a god, because in Christianity there's only one God, but they are close to God, I guess you could say.
Yeah, in the UK, as you grow up, you quickly come to realize because there are the 4 saints of the UK.
Really?
Yeah, each one of the main countries has its own. You've got England has St. George.
Okay.
Who is supposed to have killed a dragon.
St. George and the Dragon.
Yeah, and he was a soldier in the Crusades times. That's who the original guy was.
I see.
Then Wales has St. David, who was a bishop, an important priest in Wales, spreading Christianity and so on. Similar for St. Patrick for Ireland and Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I knew about St. Patrick. At least I know about, he's supposed to have driven all the snakes out of Ireland, but he's not actually from Ireland.
Right, he's probably British, born in what was Roman Britain at the time.
Yeah.
And then Scotland has St. Andrew, who is one of the big boys, because it's the Andrew who was one of the disciples of Jesus.
Yeah, I've actually been to St. Andrews, Scotland. Yeah, that's interesting. I think, doesn't each of the countries have a town or something named after their patron saint or something?
St. Andrew certainly does, because it's supposed to have been where some of his either things he owned or bones perhaps were bought into Scotland.
Okay, interesting.
And they landed there, and that is St. Andrews. But there might be a few St. Georges somewhere. I don't think there's a St. David's. Maybe there's a lot of St. David's Church, maybe.
I see, yeah. Okay.
But, yeah, those are ours in the UK, and each one has a day. You know, we don't take the day off work, but you know it's that day. It's kind of in the calendar.
Oh, I'm sure there's a patron saint of the US too, or at least a few maybe, but I don't know what it is. I would have to look that up.
I think it might be Mary. I think it might be the Virgin Mary.
Oh, well, we get the number 1 then, the mother of Jesus. Okay. But before we get too far into this, I think we should read the article and learn a little bit more about these patron saints.
Okay.
O Saint Philomena, powerful with God, I pray for your intercession. Such a prayer might sound strange coming from a Christian. After all, don't Christians pray to God directly? But for Roman Catholics, this isn't unusual at all. This branch of Christianity worships saints, holy men and women believed to hold a place of honor with God after death. People are canonized as saints for either becoming martyrs for their faith or living moral, devoted lives. Thus, they're considered spiritual guides who can intercede with God on behalf of the living. Many saints are worshipped for specific reasons, and these are known as patron saints. Some are patrons of particular countries, while others are associated with various professions, illnesses, or types of people. Saint Nicholas of Myra, for example, is the patron saint of children and the inspiration for Santa Claus. Every saint has their own feast day on the traditional Christian calendar. Several, like St. Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day, have become more widely celebrated holidays. Some saints, however, hold odd patronages. One example is Saint Gomarus, who founded a church in Belgium after failing to repair his relationship with his wife, who was known to be abusive. Gomarus is now the patron saint of troubled marriages. Saint Drogo, who was scarred by disease, is the patron saint of unattractive people. There's even a patron saint for murderers, Saint Julian the Hospitaller, who killed his own parents by mistake. There are numerous patron saints for students and scholars as well. If you feel as though you need a spiritual advisor to help you out, you may want to find out which patron saint could intercede for you.
All right, so that is our article about patron saints and the different areas that they are the saints of. We'll start with a word in our title, peculiar. As Kat said, this idea came to her when she was thinking about saints that were saints of unusual areas, not obvious things like, marriage, love, children, but stranger areas. And that's what peculiar means. Strange, odd, unusual, something that is a little bit different from the ordinary.
Yeah, and there are certainly patron saints of some very strange areas. We discuss a few of them later in the article, but first we start out with kind of an example of what you might hear somebody praying to a saint for. Oh, Saint Philomena, powerful with God, I pray for your intercession. So we have, first of all, Philomena. She was a very young girl, maybe 13 years old, when she was martyred by Emperor Diocletian of Rome for not marrying him. And she is now the patron saint of infants and youth.
All
so,
right.
Yeah, you might pray to her if you need some help with your baby. But you pray not to her as a god, but you pray for her intercession. Intercession means kind of acting on behalf of somebody, basically kind of being the middleman if you need someone to speak for you to another person, or another, in this case, God. Like maybe somebody more powerful than you, usually. Like, for example, you might speak to your manager if you want to let the CEO of your company know about something. You might speak to your teacher if you want to tell the principal about something. That's intercession.
Yeah, and it comes from the idea that a patron is kind of like a powerful person who will look out for you, give you the benefits of their experience, give you the benefits of their knowledge, make sure you're taken care of. It's somebody with a decent amount of influence. So a patron saint has influence with God about this particular area, and then God can work whatever miracle or prayer through them. So it kind of goes both ways.
Yes.
But such a prayer might sound strange coming from a Christian. After all, don't Christians pray to God directly?
Well,
yes, they do.
Most of them, yeah. I mean, in fact, all of them. But I think non-Catholics or non-Orthodox Christians, Protestant Christians, don't pray to saints.
No, not
They
really.
don't really venerate saints. Yeah. So, but we're not talking about every Christian. We're talking about Roman Catholics. But for Roman Catholics, this isn't unusual at all. And Roman Catholics, or the Church of the Roman Catholic Church, Catholicism, all that, is a branch of Christianity that is, I think, currently the biggest religious organization in the world.
Yeah, probably.
The Pope is the head of it. It's centered in the Vatican, which is in Rome. And it has churches all over the world and worshippers all over the world, I think numbering in the hundreds of millions, if not like around 1 billion. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we learn a bit more here. This branch of Christianity worships saints, holy men and women believed to hold a place of honor with God after death. So that second clause there is obviously describing what a saint is, holy men and women, and they are worshipped. It's maybe not exactly the correct word, as Kat mentioned. Venerates is probably the more accurate term.
Yeah, exactly.
But worship can kind of cover what they do. If you worship something, you think that thing is great, you have a strong belief in it, and you sort of pray to it, either literally praying to it, or you can say you worship a person, you worship a football team, you kind of devote yourself to that thing, do things that you think might please that person or entity, something like that.
And
you
think
really
it can do
admire
no
them.
wrong.
Beg your pardon?
Think it can do no wrong.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think you're right. Venerate would probably be the better word, because I think Christians don't like to say they worship anything other than God.
That being one of the rules. I have a thought here. Obviously, the Roman Catholics are one of the oldest Christian groups.
Of course.
And the Roman religion worshipped many, 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 many gods.
Yes.
Like everything had its own god. Like this room has a god. This tree has a god. You know, every different walk of life has its own god. And I do suspect there was maybe an idea here to get more Romans into the idea of Christianity. They thought, well, if we can kind of get them to think instead of gods, these are saints, that'll kind of help with this shift in what we want people to believe.
Can you think of any examples of like Roman gods that became saints in Catholicism?
Not in a strictly one-to-one basis. It's more the idea of every different area of life has its own thing that you can worship. So it would have been something that Romans did, and therefore not a big mental jump to go, okay, instead of praying to, you know, this god of wine, we'll pray to this saint who is the patron saint of, you know, business. You know, god of business to saint of business.
That makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
But anyway.
Yeah, it's an idea. I think it's an idea worth investigating, worth researching a little bit about. So they worship saints, or they venerate saints. They worship God. And how do people become saints? That's a great question. People are canonized as saints for either becoming martyrs for their faith or living moral, devoted lives. So we have a few important words here. Canonize. To canonize something means basically to make it official. And in the case of saints, to be canonized as a saint is for the church to say, okay, officially, you are known as Saint Pat. Saint Patrick. Like if Pat was to become a saint, maybe after his death or something like that.
It would have to be after my death.
Yes, it would have to be, because you have two possible qualifications to become a saint. The first is becoming a martyr. A martyr is somebody who basically they die for their beliefs, or they die for their faith. Now, I think in the modern sense, sometimes we use martyr in like a less literal sense. Like you could say, oh, somebody was martyred by the media for saying a certain thing. And it doesn't mean that they were literally killed. It just means like maybe their career was kind of ended, or they were persecuted, they were punished, they were talked badly about, they were criticized. But
they suffered.
Yeah, they suffered. Literally here, though, to be a martyr or to be martyred is to be killed for your faith.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can die for your faith and the church might decide to make you a saint, or you can live a moral, devoted life. And at the end of it, after you die, and the church might consider making you a saint. If you live a moral life, you follow a very strong moral code. You have a clear idea of what is right and what is wrong, and you only do what is right. And what's more, you kind of encourage others by your acts or by your words to do the right thing as well. A moral person would never kind of go, well, this is what I believe, but I'm going to do another thing anyway just because it's easier or more convenient, or it will get me some kind of reward. These people are basically very good people. They do the right thing all the time.
Yeah, even when they're under pressure to do the wrong thing, or even when, you know, it might be more convenient to do the wrong thing, they always choose the right way. And in this case, the right way is being a Christian, worshiping God, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Thus, they're considered spiritual guides who can intercede with God on behalf of the living. So, we're talking about saints as guides. We've talked about them interceding with God, or being intercessors, making an intercession. They are spiritual guides. Basically, that means that they will guide you in terms of the path of your spirit, the path of your soul. Kind of making sure that you are living a good life, a moral life as a Christian, and doing what is right on your path toward heaven, let's say. Yeah.
Whereas a tour guide would show you around a place, a spiritual guide would show you the right path for you to take with your life, with your decisions, with your beliefs.
Yes, exactly.
And they intercede with God. Intercede is the verb form of intercession that we looked at earlier, to kind of go and say, look, let me talk to God for you. I think I can make him understand.
Yeah.
And you might have someone intercede with you with a parent or a boss or a teacher, something like that. You know, you're afraid to talk to your boss, but maybe your a senior coworker says, I'll intercede. Let me talk to the boss. I'll make sure everything's okay. That sort of thing. Or your older brother says, don't worry about breaking that thing. I'll talk to mom and I'll tell her it wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
So that is
What a good
interceding.
brother. Yeah.
And saints do this on behalf of the living. If you do something on someone's behalf or on behalf of that person, you take their part. You're not doing it for you, you're doing it for them. You're saying, I will do this job for you. Maybe I will take on the consequences. If it goes wrong, I'll take the responsibility of doing the work. For example, suppose a particular boss or manager can't go to a meeting. Maybe they've got a different meeting or they're out of the office that day. So they say to somebody whom they trust, please go to the meeting on my behalf or go to the meeting on behalf of me. And you go instead of them. You take their place.
Right. So not only are these saints considered to be guides for spiritual people, but I think it's also important to say that miracles are credited to them. Like they're credited with like healing sick people, maybe sometimes something really extreme like bringing someone back from the dead or making somebody rich, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the qualifications. You need to have done some miracles.
2 miracles. You have to have done 2 miracles.
We're going to look at some particular saints in just a moment, but right now we're going to take a short break. Welcome back. So we're talking about patron saints here, and there are many kinds. The article's second paragraph says, many saints are worshipped for specific reasons, and these are known as patron saints. They are sort of in charge of, or they work within a particular area, or as we're about to see, a particular country.
Yeah, so some are patrons of particular countries, like the ones that Pat mentioned, while others are associated with various professions, illnesses, or types of people. So there's saints for all sorts of things. Like you said, there used to be gods for all sorts of things. Now there are saints for all sorts of things. And they are associated with these various things. To be associated with something means to have a relationship with it. Kind of to maybe be like if somebody thinks of you, they also think of that thing, or they think of that thing and they think of you. Basically, there's a one-to-one connection between you and that thing. You have an association, which is the noun form of this verb, associate.
And one of the things saints can be associated with is a profession. A profession is a job. It's an occupation, a career, a professional thing that people do for work, for money. So you could have a patron saint of doctors, of teachers, of nurses, of people who sell particular things or make
artists.
particular things. Yeah, farmers, theatre people, that sort of stuff.
For
actors,
sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a patron saint of actors somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe Roman Catholic actors probably pray to that saint. But there's also illnesses or types of people. So types of people, I think, is the one we're going to go on in here. Saint Nicholas of Myra, for example, is the patron saint of children and the inspiration for Santa Claus. The word Santa Claus actually comes directly from Saint Nicholas, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yeah, there's a few different like Sinterklaas, I think.
Sinterklaas,
the
yeah,
Dutch
which
one,
is in Dutch.
There's a few different inspirations, but Saint Nick is definitely a nickname for Santa.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a clear one. We also see that every saint has their own feast day on the traditional Christian calendar. Now, a feast could mean a big, large meal, but a feast day is more like a special day that people will think of this particular saint, maybe light a little candle somewhere, do a small religious ceremony for it, and at some point they would have eaten special foods related to this saint. So it's not a feast like a big meal, it's got more of a religious meaning of day of celebration.
Yeah, whereas fasting is usually getting rid of something, feasting is usually adding something on. I think is the sense that they're using here. So we have an example of several, like St. Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day, have become become more widely celebrated holidays. St. Valentine is the patron saint of love. And so obviously his day has become kind of a love holiday. And St. Patrick's Day he's the patron saint of Ireland. So his day has become a celebration of all things Irish.
And as the Irish people kind of spread around the world, the holiday went with them, really, and caught on, and people do big things. I know in Chicago they dye the river green and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and drink beer and wear green and all that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Claim you're Irish for a day.
Yes. So that's an example of some of the fairly more normal kinds of patron saints. But then we see some saints, however, hold odd patronages. Odd, of course, means the same as peculiar in the title of our article. And a patronage, this is more like, it's the status or position of being a patron. And here we're using the word to refer to the areas, places, jobs, illnesses that the saint is a patron of. It's like their area of responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. And you can use it to refer to other patrons of other kinds, like people who give money to certain causes, that sort of thing. But what are these odd patronages? One example is Saint Gemaris, who founded a church in Belgium after failing to repair his relationship with his wife, who was known to be abusive. Well, that's too bad for Saint Gemaris. So I guess his marriage failed, and that's probably because his wife was abusive. Somebody who is abusive will kind of use power or fear to make you feel bad, either emotionally, psychologically, physically. They might verbally abuse you. That's the verb form, like by insulting you, something like that. So probably she beat him and hit him around and told him he was a bad husband and all that sorts of thing. And it didn't work out.
But for his suffering and his building of a church and things, Gemaris is now the patron saint of troubled marriages. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, if you're having trouble with your husband or wife, maybe you're thinking things are really bad, are we going to stay together? You might, if you were a Roman Catholic, pray to Saint Gemaris and say, please help, please send me your blessing, please try and help me with these problems with my marriage.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have another interesting example. Saint Drogo, who was scarred by disease, is the patron saint of unattractive people.
I talk to him a lot.
So I guess if you're like a really ugly person, or you think you're really ugly, you can pray to Drogo, and probably he's uglier than you. So he can sympathize with your troubles.
Yeah, might find a way to make you look better, or at least to live with whatever you look like. So we see there's even a patron saint for murderers.
Yikes.
Saint Julian the Hospitaller, who killed his own parents by mistake.
Yeah, it was sort of an Oedipus situation where he was foretold to kill his parents, and so he tried very, very hard to avoid killing his parents, but then they were staying over at his house, and he thought that his wife was in bed with another man when he saw them together, so he killed them. And then he realized what he'd done, and then he felt really, really bad.
So, unfortunately, this made him, in the eyes of many, a murderer. A murderer is somebody, a criminal who commits a murder, an unlawful, personal, private killing. That is a murder, and if you commit murder and you're found guilty, you are a murderer. You are somebody who has killed other people, at least one other person, not because you just did it by accident or because you happened to be really angry and something went wrong or you were defending yourself, but you went in there with the intention to kill them.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be a murderer. Please don't ever need to pray to Saint Julian.
Yes.
Okay.
A hospitaller, by the way, if you're curious about the name, there was an order of kind of knights and healers in Israel back in the Crusades time.
Oh.
They set up a hospital, and so they were called the Hospitallers.
I see.
And they would protect people and have a place for pilgrims coming to the Holy Land. It was one of those religious orders from those days.
Okay, so he must have been one of those hospitallers.
Yes.
Okay. Well, and of course we have some more normal kind of patron saints as well. There are numerous patron saints for students and scholars as well. Of course, this is relevant to you guys because you are students who are listening to this. You might want to think about that sort of thing.
I've seen people, they go, I forget the name of the god, but they go and pray at the temples to the god who gives them good exam results.
Yeah, exactly. It is kind of like going to pray to the gods of specific things. And if you're a Roman Catholic, you would probably seek out the saint who is going to pray to God on behalf of scholars.
Help you pass that exam and stuff. So the article concludes by saying, if you feel as though you need a spiritual advisor to help you out, you may want to find out which patron saint could intercede for you. We have a grammar point here, the use of as though. As though talks about a situation, a possibly hypothetical situation. It's sort of saying, in this circumstance, if you feel in the circumstance that you need a spiritual advisor or guide, do this. We could replace as though with the word like. If you feel like you need a spiritual advisor, if this situation applies to you. And that's what we use this particular grammar pattern for.
Yeah, exactly. So now I think we've just about covered our article on patron saints, and especially unusual patron saints who intercede for people like murderers and ugly people.
Yeah, students. Yep. There's ones for thieves as well.
Yeah,
and so on.
There's one for there was one for playing card manufacturers. There are some really specific careers that have saints.
Yeah. Okay, so look up what kind of job do you want? Who is the patron saint of that job or that hobby?
Maybe we should look up the patron saint for editors.
There must be one for writers somewhere.
Probably.
Yeah, we'll put up a little... people who have patron saints, they'd often have a little shrine, a little area somewhere with a model, a figure of that saint, and they could light a candle or leave an offering, that kind of thing. That's where they would pray.
Yep. Just like the shrines in houses here.
Yep, and so that's the sort of thing that they might do. But that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for sticking with us while we talked about different patron saints. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And we will talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.